Hello, welcome to another video. Another one from home, but I promise I'll be out and about very soon with a couple of crackers on the agenda. Okay, just recently I uploaded a video of me filming outside Eric's in Liverpool and sharing some information about the iconic venue. Then remixed the short asking the simple question, what's the best live act you've ever seen? And that got me thinking, what's the best gig I've ever seen? Well, for different reasons I thought I'd do my top 5 gigs of all time. But don't worry, I'll keep it brief, but please try and watch until the end. Get involved in the comments, tell me about your favourite gigs please, and why not subscribe to the channel to become part of the community. Why not? I'll put the dates and details of each gig in the description. Okay, on with the video. They said that we were trash. Well, the name is Crass, not Clash. So said Steve Ignorant from Crass, quite ironically for me anyway. Now, I don't think the Clash were trash, and I can't imagine really that Steve did either. However, some of you oldies from Whitby might resonate with this. My dad had an account with a mail order music company that was called Britannia Music. It was owned by Polygram, who went on to sponsor the Brit Awards. Part of the deal with them was that you could order a few albums per month, I think it was 4, and very occasionally, in fact I think he only offered once, I was given an album choice by him as a diversion away from his usual Waylon Jennings, Don Williams and Boxcar Willie obsession. To be honest, the choice wasn't great, but I was grateful, so after brief deliberation, I asked him to order the Clash, give him enough rope. A few days later, on a Saturday, I remember the package of albums arriving, and my dear old dad presenting me with the said vinyl. I had every intention of blasting it out later, but arrangements had been made that day to go into town with some pals. In those days in Whitby, we had Alf Edlam's where you could buy ex-jukebox singles for 30 pence, and I remember getting quite a bit of coloured vinyl by bands like the Dickies, Squeeze and some other great stuff. A real bargain, but the sound quality on coloured vinyl wasn't quite as good, was it? Let's be honest. We had Woolies for the chart stuff, which I rarely bought, and a brilliant little gold mine over the bridge. It was called Sounds Bazaar, locally known as Gimps after the hippie throwback who ran the place, to whom I owe a lot. Now, having walked around town wearing punk badges and temporary hair dye etc, being Saturday punks failing dismally to ape the Bromley contingent, I found a record in Gimps that would change my life forever. Enveloped with amazing art by G Voucher, slogans and a very reasonable pay no more price tag, it was The Feeding of the 5000 by Crass. I'd read about them in a glossy music mag. It wasn't smash it, but something more short-lived. I liked their ideology, what I understood in basic terms anyway. Oh my goodness. Like an expensive toy being ignored in favour of the bubble wrap and cardboard. The Clash sat basically ignored as I consumed every Crass lyric, image, discord and anger, simply having never seen or heard anything like it. Some say they had a similar catharsis with the Pistols, but Crass were the ones that did it for me. They became the most important thing in my life, along with the other bands, fanzines, pen pals and people I met who had similar views. Crass didn't do many gigs, although they did once play Eric's of course. Anyway, old enough to be allowed to go to gigs, I went to see all the usual suspects, the Subhumans, Dirt, Conflict, Flux Pink Indians, Chumbawamba and so on. However, on the 5th of May 1984, and I have to word this carefully because it was probably the opposite of this, but there was something of a coming together style pilgrimage thingy, a culmination of everything I had experienced since buying that first Crass record. The venue was the former Aigburth police station, now a community centre on Lark Lane in Liverpool, and ironically the headline act was Crass. I'd hitchhiked across country from Whitby and it was the first time I'd ever been to Liverpool. To be honest, musically Crass were always a bit suspect. However, the theatre of their performance was simply incredible. The visuals, the statements, the build-up, it wasn't just that, it was the occasion, in numbers, no more the lonely fanzine writer using Able labels and Gestetner printers. There was a lot of love in the room. So that's number 5. Okay, here's number 4. I once had a girlfriend who was quite trendy really. I was morphing from my punk attire into a more casual appearance and had started to go out to pubs regularly. We didn't have a nightclub. Anyway, she could drive and her having a car opened so many opportunities. One of my favourite bands of all time are the Ramones. Did you know, however, that Phil Spector, the producer, who co-wrote Baby I Love You, which he produced for the Ronettes in the 1960s, in an incident at his house in 1979, he held the Ramones at gunpoint until 4:30 in the morning, forcing them to listen to the song, urging them to rehash a cover version. Joey Ramone was the only one who appeared on the recording alongside session musicians, as the other band members point blank refused to play on it. Anyway, I digress slightly, but I thought you might like to know that little bit of rock and roll trivia. It's not that often you get the chance to see a legendary band like the Ramones so close to home, even though it was midweek. The venue was Newcastle Mayfair and it was May 1986. Anyone who's seen the Ramones live will know what it's like. It's a short, absolutely manic, energetic and crazy experience. Hardly time to breathe, the crowd simply going nuts, and the Ramones trying their best to beat their shortest set time record. 31 songs at breakneck speed, including the 2 encores. My girlfriend's clothes ruined, her face like a slap backside all the way back, and the Ramones, not the KKK, successfully took my baby away. It's a Ramones song if you don't know. So that's number 4. Number 3. Now this one's a little sketchier in my mind, however, I used to live in that there London, and if you felt like I did in the big city, anything that reminded you of home, you welcomed with open arms. One band who were probably the best band I've ever seen live and will ever see came from various parts of North Yorkshire, York, Harrogate, Malton, Knaresborough and so on. The band were known as Zoot and the Roots. If I was doing a best live band poll, they'd win hands down, but this video is all about the gigs with a bit of background as to why they were so special. It's crazy really, as I wasn't that into their style of music. It was soulful American influenced rhythm and blues, if I was to semi-pigeonhole it. But live, my goodness, they always tore the roof off. Great brass section, incredible rhythm section, melodic keys and guitars, a charismatic and simply brilliant frontman. They were always good, always. But this particular night was simply special. You might not have heard of them, but you should have. It's an injustice that they never made it huge. Maybe it's because they were a live band that never captured their energy in a recording, who knows? They were diddle out of having a hit with this heart, I know that much. So anyway, at this gig at the Borderline in London, they were coming to the end of their lifespan, throwing guitars around, playing incredible harmonies, tight as anything you can imagine, in unison, dance steps and moves, just incredible. I could never really seriously call myself a musician after I saw that. I was absolutely gobsmacked. It had a profound effect. Okay, top 2, here we go. Who's gonna make it to number 1, etc. Well, both of my top 2 gigs were performances I shouldn't have even been at. The background to this one is that I had an old teacher at school who was friends with Paulheaton from the farm, and he said that if I ever came across him, to make myself known to him mentioning his name. So this I duly did at a Proclaimers gig at the Duchess in Leeds, and for a short time I got to know the band a little. So, not long after, the housemates in my student digs had got tickets to see the Housemartins at Bridlington Spa. It was sold out, but as the headline had to become my favourite band at this point, and there was space in the car, I went along in the hope of getting a ticket from a tout. Well, it was much better than that. I was stood around awaiting a miracle, which came in the form of the farm and Peter, who kindly blagged me onto their guest list, as they were the supporting band. So, with a cheery wave to my flatmates, I jumped the queue, smiling away coyly. I'll always be grateful to Peter for that. So, the gig featured the mighty Housemartins in what was to become their final appearance on English soil, at the largest venue closest to Hull, where they will always be the 4th best band. Wow, I mean, they played their socks off, ridiculous high notes, dance moves and energy. It was emotional and simply brilliant. The farm were great too, and north of Cornwallis of course. It was another gig that had a profound effect. I never really liked the beautiful south as much. It was a bit like comparing the Style Council to the Jam, but I've always thought paulheaton as a brilliant lyricist and frontman. So, what could top that? Well. Like I say, another gig that I wasn't really meant to go to. I worked in a factory at the time, and someone had dropped out, meaning there was a spare ticket to see the Red Wedge tour at the City Hall in Newcastle upon Tyne. It was January 1986. Anyway, I looked at the lineup, and I wasn't that enamoured really, to be honest. I loved Billy Bragg of course, but at the time it was for his politics rather than his immense love songs that enraptured me in later life. The thought, however, of sitting through Sade, Junior Giscombe and the like was a bit like having to eat broad beans to be allowed chips, and I hate broad beans. I went along with it, and as you'd imagine, the communards were acceptable, the Style Council actually quite good. Of course I enjoyed Billy Bragg, but then an announcement of a very special guest band. Now, it's important for you to try and visualise the event at this point. The City Hall is very much a sit-down venue. Labour councillors were enjoying their full credibility, showing up to important constituents. If I'm honest, it was a bit of a bore fest, but it was a gig and better than common. So the announcement, it went something like this. I'd like to introduce a band to you. I'm delighted to have pledged their support to Red Wedge, Morrissey and the Smiths. Cue absolute pandemonium. I haven't seen anything like that ever. There were no rumours or whispers, the band had simply turned up during the day, no entourage, no instruments, nothing. They had to use the Style Council's gear, although Paddy from Prefab Sprout had hinted when he introduced one of the Smiths, Wendy Smith. What a lad, eh? Now they only did a few songs. Shakespeare's Sister, I Want the One I Can't Have, The Boy with a Thorn in His Side and Big Mouth Strikes Again. Johnny Marr said on record it was one of the best things they ever did. and certainly for me it was one of the best 15-20 minutes I've ever seen. Morrissey was simply incredible that night. I always thought he would be dour and pretentious. How very wrong I was. And it was not long after that the Smiths were no more. So there we are. That's my top 5 gigs. I've given you a little bit of background as to why as well. I hope you enjoyed that one, and I hope you've stayed to the end. Please comment, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. I've tried to do something a little bit longer for you. Great stuff. Thanks very much for watching, and take care. Bye bye now.